It helps.
My name is John Barrow, and I'm running for the Georgia Supreme Court. By way, thank you. It's protocol has been established, but I missed it. How long do I have to?
That means
Well, I would say we ought to get statewide candidates a little more than 5 minutes.
I'll go with that. Yeah.
Have less time to run and more time to talk. This election takes from 8 weeks into it. We're actually electing all of our judges from Superior to Supreme. They wanted the elections booted up so they can get elected where everybody knows what's going on. And that's when we have our elections. When we're nominating everybody else, we're electing our judges. And by way of background, many of y'all know I say a tale of woe. I was first, I was the most, and I was the last. I think I'm gonna be the first again. I was one of the first members of the Athens Clarke County Commission, but consolidated, served 14 years in local government there. And after that, I became the first Democrat to defeat an incumbent Republican anywhere in the Deep South in the quarter. Mike Fowler had done it. Had anybody else done it in the Deep South? Then, in my 10 years in Congress, I kind of became the most. I don't think I changed very much, but folks around me changed a lot. When I left Congress, I was the most bipartisan member of Congress. I found a way to work with and vote with folks on the other side more than anybody else did on either side, which, something of an accomplishment. And when I left Congress, I was the last. I was the last white Democrat in Congress from the Deep South. That's what gerrymandering and political manipulation done to our party. It's made us unrepresentative of the party as a whole, and that puts us at a disadvantage when competing on the broadest plane. So that's been. I'm running for the Supreme Court because I believe that Georgians have the same rights under our state constitution that we used to have under Roe versus Wade. Because my opponent is not. My opponent's name is Andrew Pinson. He is the youngest political appointee on a court that is filled with political appointees. He was a Clarence Thomas law clerk. He is an officer in the Federalist Society, and he was the chief appellate lawyer for the state of Georgia when Georgia joined Alabama and Mississippi in the case that overturned Roe versus Wade. And no sooner had he turned in that brief, he was rewarded for his efforts when the decision actually came down. He was appointed to the Georgia Supreme Court. Now, I got tons of experience that my opponent doesn't have. He was a lawyer. He became a lawyer about 12 years ago. I became a lawyer 45 years ago. I don't look it, do I? I'm a classmate of John Roberts, and I look younger than him. And when I was in law school, we had a bright third-year student when I was a 1L. His name was Merrick Garland. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So that's that kind of experience. I worked in a small firm, small town, quarter of a century, represented all kinds of people who could choose any lawyer they wanted, and they chose me. I didn't work for a big law firm like he did, where he didn't choose his clients, they didn't choose him. The law firm chose him, and the clients chose the law firm. Big difference. He had 2 years of experience in an international firm representing corporate clients, had 25 years of experience representing folks like y'all in Athens, earning my feet, sweat on my brow, not knowing from 1 year to the next whether or not the case I was working on was going to break my firm. That's doing it the hard way. I have that experience. I also have some experience in elected office, 14 years as county commissioner, 10 years in Congress. And it struck me after, about 10 years ago, virtually all the time I was working sort of a legal aid clinic for people. Needed a lawyer, but couldn't afford it. That's what I was doing in Congress a lot. My constituent service work was helping people who needed help with an agency or with the state or with somebody in power. They couldn't get any help from anybody. So that was what I was doing for 10 years. My opponent has no experience. After 2 years of clerking for a big old international law firm, he was appointed the Assistant Solicitor General for Georgia. And that is how he rose to the position. The lawyer who represented you and me when he committed the state to join in the case to overturn the rules. Now, that's my way of experience. I think what's important to us to recognize is that the U.S. Supreme Court is turning more and more of the business of deciding the constitutionality of state laws over to the states. They're letting the states be the judge of it. They're basically closing federal courts to claims about gerrymandering. That's been returned to the states. Women's right to choose, reproductive freedom, that's been returned to the states. We can no longer go to federal court for any of these things anymore. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's more stuff like that coming. That's why I think it's more important than ever that we have state Supreme Court justices who will uphold the state constitution when the politicians in the General Assembly are passing laws and invade your rights and mine. Because when they turn it over to the states, yeah, they turn over the legislature and the governor in the first instance, but in the final analysis, they turn it over to the state Supreme Court to decide what the law, what rights are going to be in that state. And that's why I'm running. We've never had a greater need for Supreme Court justices who will do that than we do right now. Now, a couple of deets about the election. I mentioned this before. The election is going to be on May 21. That's primary day. That is 8 weeks from Tuesday. It's also going to be on the primary ballot for both parties. I'm going to be at the bottom of the Republican primary ballot. Be at the bottom of the Democratic primary ballot. Folks, whoever you are, wherever you're going to think I'm voting your primary. That's what they decided. That's what it's going to be. We have a huge opportunity here to shape the court for the better in what has become a critical era in deciding what our rights are who gets to decide. And I'm committed to making sure that we embrace the protections we have in the Georgia Constitution and use those to defend us from encroachment by the legislature when politicians want to tell you what you have to do or what you have to believe or where you have to go. Now that's kind of what I wanted to start with. Do y'all have any questions? Anybody here want to raise anything or ask any questions about this?
Not about your candidacy, but about this. What else will we be voting on the 21st?
Other elections on that ballot. This is a pretty good thing for us because the only other statewide election, the only other elections don't take place on that day is the Court of Appeals judgeship, a little court. Doesn't have final jurisdiction over any things we've been talking about. It's intermediary. It processes cases. It doesn't really make the law. The Supreme Court does that. That race will be on the ballot, but there'll be no statewide primary in any statewide office. This is that once in every 12-year cycle when we have the highest, the biggest turnout generator is the congressional primaries. That's the highest office. It's not statewide. We'll have 3 primaries that will generate some turnout. 2 of them are Democrats, 1 of them is a Republican primary. The third over around Columbus, then David Scott, Lucy McBath in Atlanta. If you ask me, I think the campaigning for by those candidates is going to generate more turnout Democratic voters. That is usually the case. And as I said, there'll be no statewide race on the card, like governor or senator. None of those. This is that, like I said, this is in the rolling cycle of every 2 years that we live in and work with. This is one of those where we really are going to be top of the card. And if, as I hope, folks see the importance of this election, I think it's going to a lot.
Tell them where you live.
Well, I grew up in Athens.
God's
You know, can't all be born in Madison. Some of them would love to move to Madison. I bet that's a story for a lot of people. A lot of people helped me here, folks who born someplace else, move here. But I grew up on the corner, around the corner from the tree that owns itself in Athens, when it was still a dirt road. How many folks can lay claim to the fact I run for office? I actually born on dirt road. Reminded of that politician you were so proud of. I was born in a log cabin that I built with my own hands. We're after graduating the University of Georgia, I went away to law school, clerked for a couple of years for a federal judge, a good judge, not a Clarence Thomas, not a guy, a real wonderful man. Then I decided to come back home to Athens because I'm kind of a hothouse plant. I wouldn't thrive in anything other than a little native soil. So I wanted to come back to Athens and practice law where I get to work with real people having real problems. I had the same opportunities that young Andrew Pinson had. I was recruited by a Wall Street law firm, spent some time with had an offer to join them, and I knew what my path would look like if I went with them. And I didn't want to do that. So at a great sacrifice financially, came home to Athens and never regretted it. After 20-something years of practicing law, I ran for Congress, and then I got gerrymandered out of Athens. I told you I was the most bipartisan member of Congress. I was also the most gerrymandered member of Congress in the history of the Republic. No sooner had I been elected, they were already redrawing my district. And they finalized that. Okay, my home isn't here, but my district is still here. So I moved down to Savannah to defend what was left of the district that had elected me. And not many folks have an attachment to a congressional district. The district doesn't mean much to most folks. You know, it changes every 10 years, sometimes more often than that. So that's sort of an amorphous thing, but there was a district that had elected me. It was largely intact. And I represented them just as much as I represented my hometown. So when they gave me the choice of running in my hometown in somebody else's district, or running in the district that elected me, that's what that choice I made. I moved to Savannah. And I won when I wasn't supposed to. And I kept on winning. Then they gerrymandered me again. This time they took Savannah out of the district. My district originally was a three-legged stool that had Athens, Augusta, and Savannah. And no sooner had I got elected, they saw that Athens leg off. So I'm kind of going like this. And then they saw that Savannah leg off. So I'm kind of sitting like this. But I held on for the fourth term. They expected that. And after that, when I was given the order of the boot, finally, I was able to come back home. And the rest is history. A few years back, I ran for Secretary of State against a guy nobody's heard of. Nobody's heard of. 4 horses. And fate has a way of working things out. Because if I had been elected to that office, to which I was eminently qualified, a certain person would have been certain. So things have a way of working out. Yes. They're going to hear about me, and they're going to hear about me in the weeks of coming up to the election. We already know. Look at Kansas. Look at other places around the country. We know that this is an issue where there is a broad, bipartisan cross-section of the public consisting of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans who believe that reproductive freedom is something that belongs to a woman, her family, and her doctors. And a lot of folks thought about that in amorphous terms until Dobbs came along, and now we're seeing case after case after case emerging into the public view where folks are actually getting an education on how much we have benefited from the privacy that we used to enjoy. This is, after all, an extension of the right of privacy to live your life as you want to, not to have people meddling in the most personal decisions that you can make for yourself and your family in your life. That's what we're going to campaign on. We're going to make sure folks are aware of this. This is a winning issue everywhere. We are better than Kansas. Just think about it. Kansas got Topeka. We got Atlanta. Now, Atlanta's far from perfect, but it's the driving force for politics in this state. Atlanta is doing to Georgia what Washington, D.C. has already done to Virginia. And it's doing it with the same means. Is attracting people who'd rather come here than to Alabama. They don't leave in Wisconsin, leave in Minnesota, go in South, and they'd rather, you have between Florida, South Carolina, and Mississippi, they're coming here. And they're not card-carrying Democrats, they're not claiming liberals. These are people who believe in economic opportunity. They're young, they're dynamic, they look for urban services. They want things you can get in an urban society, and they want to be let alone too. They believe in the right to be let alone, which a certain young law student named Louis D. Brandeis once said is the most comprehensive of rights and the one most cherished by civilized men, to which I would add civilized women and their doctors. The right to be let alone as you deal with some of the hardest things you have to do. This is personal to me. I learned late in my life that my mother had to deal with this issue on one occasion. My wife had to deal with this on occasion. And one of my daughters had to deal with this. My mother was protected by privilege and by a medical culture that genuinely let doctors do what needed to be done in order to assist people in some of the worst outcomes you can have in trying to bring a wanted baby in. My wife was protected by Roe after the issue had become politicized. And my daughter suffered from it. She went through the tortures of, very recently. So this hits really close to home with me. And I think it hits close to home with a lot of people. You don't have to read about it. Know somebody who has been or would have been affected by the current state of affairs if the law we're dealing with now was affecting them. So I think this is important. I think but it's, as I said, it's not the only issue, it's sort of the tip of the iceberg. Federal courts are turning more and more of the stuff that we used to rely on the federal courts for, back to the states. And the final analysis, that means the state Supreme Court. And we can have a state Supreme Court like they have in Alabama. Oh, we can do better than that. And I know that in this one race, we can do better. And that's why I ask for y'all's support. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'll stick around a little while.
Besides money, child.
You say besides that, besides that, how was the evening? How was the play with this money? Besides that. It is campaigning like none other. In 5 elections to the county commission, I knocked on every door in my district. In 6 congressional elections, I did everything that you can do. Media, get out the vote, voter contact. We would spend a disproportionate amount of our time and effort trying to squeeze out that low percentage of turnout, getting people going in neighborhoods and trying to get people to vote who only vote, every 12 years. We do that because in an election, it's going to be as close as that. We had the time to do it, and we needed to get every vote. We don't have the time to do that, thankfully. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the time to do it. But the good news is, if we can just get this message out to the voters, we're going to vote. It's a win in hand. We do not have to go to war with the army that we want. We can win this war with the army that we got. But you've got to be able to reach them, because as you said, point out, they don't know anything about this.
Right.
Text for our message comes to the ballot. How can they believe on him of whom they have not heard? You got to hear about the candidates, and we're going to have to reach people at every way that we can, but in a lightning quick fashion. Money isn't everything. I'll be the first to say that. But everything that matters depends on money. That's if it's going to be effective in an election. Yes, ma'am. Well, I have a website, Barrow for Georgia, spelled out.com. And you are cordially invited to go there and give till it hurts. I promise you, you get up on May 22nd, and we flipped a seat on the Georgia Supreme Court. And we've continued that unbroken chain of successes we've had ever since the Dobbs decision came back. You're gonna feel good about what you did, but not unless you give a lot. On the other hand, if you get up on May 22nd, you haven't given everything you could, you haven't given to the hurt, and we've got the first defeat on this issue in the country since Dobbs. How you gonna feel then? Now, you want to knock on doors, you want to get out the vote, fine, good luck. Like I said, that's what I believe in. I've practiced that. This is an election like none other. We do not have the time. If I could have a meeting like this every night between now and election day, I'd just scratch the very surface of people who are probably already predisposed to support me anyhow. We really have to reach people where they are. And they're not where we are, they're not where you want them, they're where they are. So if you want help, go there, give till it hurts, and then give a little more, because it hurts a little, it can't hurt much more. And that will help, I promise you.
Hey, John, can I ask a question from Zoom land?
That,
Thank you for coming.
y'all CG love for me, will you please?
So I want you to know a couple of things and ask you a couple of questions. One is, last night I was on a statewide rural Dems call, and it was amazing because the question was raised by somebody from South Georgia, like, so what do we know anything about these Supreme Court judges races? And And are there any Democrats in the mix and whatever? So I pitched you. I'm recording this segment, so I will share it with the group, so they'll be able to see your pitch that way. But there's two organizations that I've done work with that are nonpartisan but progressive issues-based groups. One is Indivisible Georgia, and
Yes.
one is the Postcard for Voters Initiative. So are you aware of them, and can we connect you with them?
Yes, please. I am aware of them and I want you to connect me with them. I'm going to make my own outreach, but I think it will matter a lot more if you do as well. Please help out and make sure we get connected.
Yeah, because those are people powered and they can get them, they can work with your campaign to get the messaging, the issues part of the messaging. And because you're nonpartisan, I think they can push you as a candidate without breaking rules, right?
I think so. Yes, and that reminds me, I should emphasize this. May have sort of escaped folks in passing. I'm able to come to a partisan gathering just because I'm talking about my election. Otherwise, I wouldn't be allowed to do that as a judicial candidate. I am running, not as a Democrat. It's my history, and I can talk about my history. I'm not running as a Democrat. I'm not running as a Republican. I'm running as a lawyer who believes that our Constitution gives us the same rights we used to have that the federal court just taken away from us, against a lawyer who doesn't believe that. I know what his politics are. He knows what mine are. I'm going to try and make that the big issue. But this is lawyer to lawyer on the issue of what our rights are under our Constitution. And on that issue is joint. That is the central issue in this campaign. And Gene, anything you can do to help me with those folks, I would be appreciative. I'm grateful.
You got it. Whatever we can do. Choice being on the ballot in Georgia to me is a huge driver and an opportunity to do what you do best, but is so not there, which is create a bipartisan coalition that can get organized around an issue that they share passion about in common. So that alone for Georgia is a really good exercise to remember. We didn't always make stupid, if you're watching the legislature right now, you will see some actually really stupid decisions being made based on partisan politics. But I think your candidacy is a chance to elevate it, but you are so right. People are clueless about judges' races. Do they matter? How do we know who's who? But by you effectively coming out clearly and saying, I'm a lawyer, the Georgia Constitution protects this right for you not to have the government make your most intimate decisions, choices on the ballot, absolutely clearly. I mean, that's message 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think.
I think you're right.
Gene, have anything? Is that?
No, thanks.
Yeah,
Y'all been most generous with your time. I didn't want to trespass on your night too much, but thank you so much for letting me come. Thank you all for your support in the past. Help me as much as you can in this race. I think it'll be what I promise.
Thanks to all of our candidates who came tonight and spoke. We will continue the fundraising at our next meeting, that discussion. And if you all could have some other ideas about fundraising, then, bring it that, we'll talk about it. Let's follow this. Jean wanted me to mention, if you're interested in going to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, that now is the time to get with that. And I've got some information about that. Do you have anybody that would be interested? And going to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Okay. I don't have, it's, the deadline for doing it is coming up like in a few days. I just got this. I made some copies, but if you're interested, Jane, can they contact you?
Sure, I'll hook you in. Basically, the Democratic Party of Georgia, all state parties create delegations to go and vote, participate in our national convention and vote to support the Biden-Harris ticket because they're our official, they have enough votes now. They're going to be our candidates. So it's a crazy, amazing, intense experience. I'm not sure if anybody in the room has ever been to one. I've never been to one. But the process to become a delegate for Georgia there's a couple of stages in which you can hook in. there's certain people that are automatically delegates, Nikema Williams, because she's chair of our party, for example. But each congressional district gets allocated delegates based on the share of Democratic votes in their district. So it's not even by county or by congressional district. The congressional districts that are heavily Republican or Democrat will get relatively more choices, more spots. We have 5, I think it is, in CD10. Coming up in April will be the meeting where we as Georgia 10 gather at the meeting and elect our candidates. I don't know if you even recall, but some years back when Patsy Harris was chair of our party and the CD10 chair, we actually had that. The only one I've gone to actually was here in Morgan County at the Morgan County Gym. And it was a boatload of fun to hang out with Democrats from all over the state and watch it, from all over the district and watch it. But we have 5 slots. You have to apply for those slots by, what's the date? The 20th. It's coming up real soon, early
There's a
next
meeting
week.
on Sunday, the 24th, to talk about it, how to get to the Tuesday deadline.
Right. So you've got to fill out the application and apply. So that makes you eligible to run. But we all come together on this Saturday. So the way you get one of those coveted 5 spots is to A, sign up to be a candidate on time, and B, get friends to show up and give up a Saturday morning to come and vote for you. Because there will be candidates who are motivated and can bring, 15, 20 friends who are willing to give up a Saturday morning to say, I want this person. So that's the thing. It's up in Watkinsville, so it's not a terribly far place for anybody to travel for that meeting.
Watkinsville?
The CD10 meeting to elect. I'm looking at my calendar right now to just tell you when that meeting is. So April, I'm thinking April 6th, but let me double check. Yes, April 6th in Watkinsville is the election. So consider now here's the deal. It costs money. Delegates are responsible for their costs. You have to stay at the hotel because rather than friend's house, like I lived in Chicago 20 years. I have friends in Chicago. I'm comfortable with Chicago Transit, but security is going to be insane. And you've got to be at the hotel to pick up your credentials each and every day. So it is really not a good idea to not plan to stay at the hotel. You're going to have your travel costs, but airfare from Atlanta to Chicago is pretty reasonable. You'll have food costs. So they say at the high end, it could be as much as $5,000. But we were talking last night with Vinny, who's the chair of the Disabilities Caucus, and he's gone a couple of years. And he said, really, if you're willing to share a room with people, you can probably get it down to around $2,500 if you're on the frugal thing. And you can ask people to donate to your cause, right? So I think frankly, before I got sick, I was really thinking, because I have Chicago roots, it would just be sort of a once in a lifetime fun thing for me to hang out with National Democrats, but I'm not going to do it. But I will say here, I will donate to somebody, not all of the money to go, but a chunk of the money to go. And I think we might have other Democrats who would also maybe help chip in a little bit of money to help somebody go if money is the object. One of the things they told us last night is that I was on the DPG Rural Caucus call and we were talking about this. They really want to be sure that our delegation looks like Georgia Democrats. So it can't just all be, old, white, financially comfortable people. So think about, is there a young person? Think about, is there an African-American person? Think about if we could get behind somebody who wants to give up a bunch of days in August to go have the experience of a lifetime. And if there is that person, sign up and then challenge us to get behind you, both to vote on April 6th and to maybe help with a contribution of money and make it possible. Because wouldn't that be cool if Morgan County sent somebody to the Democratic National Convention and then we could all see them on TV?
It's so close now, time-wise, but anybody else interested? Okay, while Jean is here talking with us, Jean, we miss you. We need you. We, I really wish you were here. Lord, I wish you were here.
So
And-
if you haven't heard, the reason I'm not here is because I had my second chemo treatment today. So I did luckily get home in time to be able to join you on the call, but I just wasn't sure. You know,
And
yeah.
we understand that. We want you to take care of yourself. We're all doing a giant hug right here.
Group hug.
Thank you, thank you.
And,
That lifts me
Yeah.
up. I'll tell you what, the best medicine is all the love coming from the community.
all right, so we talked about that with the convention, we talked about, the vote effort and planning. I think I'm gonna have to wait on that. I need Jean, I need some help, if, so bear with me on that if you would. Anybody else have any other thing to bring up? On here, I've got Facebook info. I don't think about looking at the Democratic thing on Facebook, but Jean is posting everything and, I don't, Jean, do you have anything else to add?
Thank you all for coming. It's going to be a fantastic year. Here's what I would say to you all. By the time we get to April's meeting, which is a fantastic program, I will preview April's meeting for you. We have got two really crackerjack, I'm going to call them young because I'm old, women running for the Democratic nomination for CD10 to challenge Mike Collins, who is trying to be the maggiest of, congressmen of all. So we're going to bring them in and we're going to do a forum. It'll be live and Zoom. We're going to invite a whole lot of other people on and super excited. I don't know if many of you got to meet Braden Newsom, who graduated Morgan County High School last year. He's over at Oxford now. He's super interested in politics, so he's going to be our moderator. So I love the idea we're going to have a young person, doing the moderation, but it'll be a conversation about what their vision is, and that's going to help all of us decide personally who we think should be our nominee, and that's going to be on the ballot, obviously, in May. It's a contested race. So that's a great program in April, but also by April, we would like to begin to see the shape of who are going to be the sort of the individuals that take on pieces of our get out the vote activity. Who's gonna be our two people who did postcards to voters, for example. Neither one is in a position to lead that process. So we're looking for a leader to do postcard to voters. You can break a get out the vote effort into certain little chunks, right? And so think about whether you would be willing not only to say, I'll volunteer to help with this, but we need maybe 5 people total who will say, I'd like to be in charge of something. I'd like to be the head facilitator of something. And it won't be without support and help from the group. But think about,
Challenge everybody here to think about what they're willing to do and come back to that meeting
Yeah.
that. Okay, quickly. I promised a dear friend who is a great supporter of the Democratic Party. She wanted y'all to see what she got in the mail. She was so upset about it. I don't know if y'all got one either, but I promised her that I would bring it for you to look at because it was very upsetting to her. Has anybody else gotten that? Okay, now.
It would go nicely with the shoes. It's the Trump never surrender pistol that you can order.
Everybody needs a sheet of paper. Everybody, no, one actually. Everybody needs one, either an agenda or one of these. Everybody needs one. You can't have two, you can only have one. You can either have the agenda or you can have this. All right, and who does not have one piece of paper? Yeah, do you have one? No, you don't have one. Okay. No. You don't have to say anything. Yes.
I want some general paper here.
Now, you need a paper from me. Yes. You need a paper from me. Now, everybody should have a paper that has a number on it. You have a paper with a number.
Yeah.
Everybody has a paper.
Lucky number.
Okay. Well, the next time we meet will be after Easter. And so let's get somebody to draw a number here. Are you? You don't have Don't get it started. What is it?
It's either a 6 or a 9.
Does anybody have a number? Nobody has a six. Nobody has a six. Okay.